Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down co-host Keith Myers. Welcome in, Keith. We're at the end of a week. It's a Friday night, almost late afternoon. We're both having our favorite beverage in hand. We're going to talk Seahawks 2022 schedule.
Yeah, and it's an interesting schedule this year because right up front in the very first game of the year, the Seahawks play on Monday Night Football against Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, that was well orchestrated, NFL. Congratulations. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because I don't expect the Seahawks to be an interesting team to a national audience after week
one.
This putting it up front just makes it applicable to a national audience. They are going to be able to use this all summer.
Oh my goodness!
In advertising, right? It's the big.
I want them so badly to. I want the Denver Broncos to lose. So I've always not liked the Denver Broncos. Sorry, peripheral Denver Bronco fans out there. Just because I grew up not liking them. You know, I went to the very first Seahawks game in the Kingdome, and from that first season on, and when they got Elway and so forth, it just became one of those must-hate teams for all Seahawk fans, and that has never really left me, even though we left the AFC West. And so now that Russell's there, and I like Russell, and you know that, and he's going to always be, one of my favorite Seahawk players. But when he changes teams and until he's done playing, that he's going to be on the wrong side of the line, and I want my team to beat him. And this game, I want my new defensive coordinator, Clint Hurt, and all those guys on the defensive side to make life completely miserable for him. Now, do I give the Seahawks any chance to really win this game? Yeah, 20. I'm going to say 25% right now, just because. That's my early line. 75. That's fair. 75% Denver, 25% Seahawks. A lot of stuff can happen in between. But they're going to come out blazing. But I think the Seahawks are too. I mean, Pete Carroll's not going to let them walk into this stadium and beat the Seahawks just because they're supposed to. Come on. Yeah. They're going to put up a fight, and it's going to be an entertaining game.
It's at home, which helps. And it's week one, and with a relatively nothing preseason, right? So Russ isn't going to play much during the preseason. It's going to be a slow start, just like, it's the new frontier as far as these preseason games go. There's only 3 of them. The veterans barely play at all now. So it's his new team, new offense, all of that. And week one is one of those things where there's no tape on teams. So you see upsets, you see teams, come out and just surprise people because they don't know what the opponent doesn't know what to expect. I mean, you saw it last year when, Houston won in week one, and just, it was kind of like really surprising. Like, wow, they just thumped someone. And then they lost, 102 straight games after that. Okay, maybe not, but it felt like it. And then, but that week one can be weird. So we'll see what happens.
I talk about immediately coming out with playoff atmosphere. So at home in Seattle, weather's going to be great. It's on September 12th. It's a Monday night. Night football. Seahawks and Pete Carroll have always risen to that occasion. It's going to be fiery. I mean, Russell Wilson is coming back to the only place he's known. This is going to be his first game as a professional in another uniform, and he's coming back to the place that he's played his entire career. I mean, it really couldn't be scripted any better. It's unfortunate that we don't possibly have a team to match the talent level
Yeah.
of Denver, but I don't know that necessarily matters in this game. I think this game is going to be all about emotion, and it's just going to be one of those things that's just going to be super fun. I'm kind of excited about it. As the schedule unfolds here, you'll see there's not a lot of exciting games, given that the idea that we may not be that good. This one's definitely, the premier game, and it's right out of the gate. You mentioned preseason really quick. The first game is August 13th. If you want to circle that on your calendars, that's how long we have to wait until the Seahawks suit up to play a preseason game. It's at Pittsburgh. We've got a home game versus the Chicago Bears. I think that's a Thursday night game, I think it looks like. And then August 25th against the Dallas Cowboys at Dallas. So a couple of away games, one home game for preseason, then it starts.
And that the Dallas game, as far as time and date, are not official. It's
not official.
It's to be determined as far as when that game will be played. So,
and that's clearly a full 2 weeks before the season begins, and we have a Monday night game. So we're the last game played on the first weekend of football. So we almost have 3 weeks in between our preseason game and our first regular season game. I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't know if it matters.
I don't know. So after that, so they play the week 1 game.
Hold on.
Week 2.
I have the whole graphic to put up, so I'm going to just add that to the screen.
Oh, you have this whole thing up here.
Yeah.
Wow, that looks nice. So week 2, the Seahawks go on the road to San Francisco, in what would in other years have been a really big game early on the schedule. This year, who knows? I mean, we don't even that San Francisco doesn't even know who their quarterback's going to be. Seattle doesn't know who their quarterback's going to be. It is it's a thing. We'll see.
The interesting thing is we've won 15 out of the last 17 games against San Francisco. We just seem to have their number, but this is a team that was in the NFC Championship game last year. They kind of limped in there. They didn't have a great year under marginal quarterback play. Who knows what they're going to do with the whole Trey Lance thing and the Garoppolo. I don't even know how that's been allowed to carry on. The only thing that it tells me, Keith, is they do believe they've got some sort of issues with their now second-year quarterback, and he's not quite ready to go.
I don't know. I think what happened was that the quarterback market got away from San Francisco. They were thinking that they could sit there, hold out, and someone would eventually dump a pile of picks in their lap. And it didn't happen because other quarterbacks became available, like Russell Wilson. And, that Carson Wentz deal went down, early in the process and that kind of stuff. Matt Ryan got traded. And so now you've got Jimmy Garoppolo and Baker Mayfield without a home. I mean, they technically are still on contract and on a roster, but neither one of them should be. They should both be in new places, but there aren't teams looking for quarterbacks. So I think that it was the 49ers just misplayed the situation. They didn't understand what was happening in terms of the quarterback market, and now they're stuck. And they don't want to cut him.
I'm hearing, though, that the read there is that they still prefer Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback over Trey Lance.
Yeah, that can be the read all they want, but Trey Lance has a high ceiling, and there's going to be growing pains. You've got to get him out there on the field. Jimmy Garoppolo is mediocre, and he's never going to be better than that.
Dude, I hear you. I really do. I hear you. But at the same time, there's credible reports being reported out of that building that indicate that they don't feel like he's ready to go. And that's a problem for them. I mean, that's a real problem for them because they sent all that draft capital away. They put him in there, and then they're sitting on that draft pick, and Garoppolo's in there. He's got a bigger contract this year. It's his final year, I believe, of that deal, and then he'll be gone. And the people there feel like the longer that he sticks around there, the longer it is. The indication is that he will start week 1. Jimmy Garoppolo, I'm talking about.
Yeah, I don't buy it. If Trey Lance isn't ready now, that's on the coaches. It's not on him, right? That's because they didn't play him last year. They didn't prep him last year so that he would be ready now. They didn't do their jobs trying to, coax a couple of wins out of that roster and barely make the playoffs. Why? They needed to, for the long-term health of that franchise, get Trey Lance ready for this year, and they didn't do it. So now they're in a position where, let's say that is true, and they end up sticking with Jimmy Garoppolo for at least part of the season. You're not going to get anything back for him in trade.
I know.
And you're continuing to stunt Trey Lance's development by not getting him on the field. They've misplayed that so poorly, because by now Garoppolo should be gone. They should have gotten a bunch of draft picks for him, and they should have used those draft picks to build a better roster for Trey Lance going forward. But they didn't do that.
Seemingly a well put together front office. I've thought that they built that roster pretty darn well up until this whole quarterback thing. So, all right, so that's our week 2 opponent. That's away at San Francisco. Week 3, Atlanta Falcons.
Yep. The next two and a half games, maybe 3 games, depending on what goes on with the Saints, are actually winnable games, even with Seattle's roster the way it is and all of its deficiencies, because the Falcons are worse. The Seahawks are building. They don't have a quarterback yet, but they're still building a roster. Atlanta just finished tearing theirs apart. They haven't built anything.
After they won 7 games last year. So they did win. They had the same finish that Seahawks had.
Yep.
And, they did go ahead and remove their quarterback, Matt Ryan. They signed their guy to come in and quarterback for at least a season. They drafted Ritter as well. Mariota, I'm talking about. Kind of anxious for him to get some starts this year to kind of rebuild his brand and see if he's got other opportunities down the road. But it looks like maybe it's Desmond Ritter longer term for this team. Maybe not the final solution, but we'll find out. I do think that that's definitely winnable, but the Seahawks have struggled with them lately, so we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just Matt Ryan. They've a lot of the talent on that team. They gutted that roster in order to start the rebuilding process. And this is a team that's going to be a 2 or 3 win team, most likely, and so that they're in position to get a quarterback next year. So whether they get a chance to make a decision on Ritter on whether they want to go forward with him or not. But he was a 3rd round pick. This isn't a high pick.
Correct.
This is a roster. They're going to be in position to go draft a guy like CJ Stroud.
Yeah.
And so
this is kind of a 3 or 4 win team, I think, on paper, at least as far as their roster is concerned. I agree with you. Yeah. And we just talked about them on a different show, and that's kind of the conclusion that we came to as well. So,
yep. The next game after that is on the road against Detroit. Detroit's always a winnable game, no matter who you are, because they're
trying to change.
They're trying to change, but they still have Jared Goff at quarterback. Right. I actually really like their coaching staff. I do. I think their coaching staff, they came in, they got kind of a bum deal in terms of the roster they were handed, and but they've managed to put things together. I think they've done the stuff the right way. They're building their roster and their defense. They didn't rush to a quarterback when there weren't any decent ones this year. So I think they're doing it right, but they're still a long ways away.
I really like Dan Campbell. He's kind of a warrior dude, old school, no holds barred kind of coach. And I kind of like that throwback mentality that he's got there. He's building kind of a championship caliber mentality first, and then the players follow. Ben Johnson's the offensive coordinator. Aaron Glenn's the defensive coordinator. They do have some players because they've been picking early the last several years. And they got some draft capital on the Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford trade. And they still don't have a quarterback. Obviously, they do believe that Jared Goff is kind of their point guard type guy, but he still doesn't have the ability to even do that really well.
No, he's awful.
Given the roster. I think he had a better opportunity there in LA and still couldn't get it done. And it's just worse off for him here. They've got some nice pieces, including Aiden Hutchinson. They just drafted on their defensive line. I think teams are going to have to game plan for that guy. But other than that, Yeah, I think it's a winnable game. At New Orleans, week 5, October 9th. It's another 10 a.m. game. But the Seahawks have done well in 10 a.m. games. I think, we've won 13 out of the last 14 10 a.m. games since 2018 or something like that. New Orleans is interesting, though. Sean Payton's no longer the coach. That's kind of weird.
Yep.
And Dennis Allen's taken over that job. So that's a big change for them.
Really unexpected for Sean Payton to step down suddenly, but that's what happens. And they now don't have no Drew Brees. That happened over a year ago, and now no Sean Payton. It's a completely new era there in New Orleans, and I don't have any idea what to expect from them at this point. I'm expecting them to be, not great, not good, but not terrible.
And they haven't been terrible. And their defense has been pretty good. It's just been their offense holding them back a little bit. Now they're still kind of with Jameis Winston there. So 5 games in, what do you think? We've got a tough stretch right out of the gate, and then we've got 3 possibly winnable games. We could end up being 3-2, Keith.
Yeah, we could be. We won't be. But
I'm trying to pull this out of you if you can't tell.
I know you are. But I'm saying the Seahawks actually, the way the schedule worked out, it made for. I mean, really, they could very easily be 2-3 in this situation. Having the Falcons, or they could be 0-5. Yeah, the Falcons at home makes it better. They should be better. They have a better roster than Detroit, but they're playing on the road at 10 a.m. and all of that. And that could be, that could be what is necessary for them to lose. If the Saints were at home, they probably, they would have a better shot, but they're not. They're on the road again at 10 a.m. 2 weeks in a row. That's not a great situation for them. And it just makes for a tough stretch for them in what should be an easy stretch. that set of games, Atlanta, Detroit, New Orleans, if Wilson was still the quarterback of this roster, you think that's 3 wins, right? And instead,
easy. Gosh, that's at least 3, if not 4 or 5.
No, just that stretch.
Just those season.
Weeks 3 and 4. Weeks 3, 4, and 5, you should pencil in 3 wins. If Wilson was still here, but he's not. And I'm thinking if they go 1-2 in that stretch, that's probably meeting expectation.
That'll be very telling. I think this is really the tell. This first 5 games, Keith. It just really is. If we can go 3-2, we might have a chance to get to 7 or 8, 9 wins. If we go
I don't know.
1-5, it's over before it even begins.
If they go 3-2, I still don't know if it matters, because you look at that's the easiest part of their schedule, and it just gets worse from there.
Yeah, let's move along. It starts with Arizona. Now we've done well in Arizona. This is a home game, but Arizona's kind of had our number at home. We've kind of played better on the road, but Arizona comes in. We kind of annihilated them in the last game, Russell Wilson's last game down in Arizona last year to finish the season. Now it's October 16th, this home game. I would think if Kingsbury can get those guys motivated, they would want to completely take this game and just make sure that Seattle was out of the division race before it even began.
Seattle was out of the division race before the season started, so I don't know if that matters that much. What really might affect this is an early in the year game for Arizona, which means they're going to be good and they're going to win. When they play later in the year, they're going to be bad and they're going to lose. And that's just because of the coach that they've got, and they just really are not good at their jobs overall. So, but it's too early in the year, and I don't have that much of a chance. You're going to see Murray, for a whole pile of yards, and everything's going to go well for him.
And again, is primed to really compete for their division crown with the Denver Broncos. And Kansas City, for example. Kansas City hasn't diminished, I don't think.
Yeah, so the Chargers missed the playoffs, but they missed the playoffs because their defense was awful. Their offense was, quite frankly, championship, caliber. But their defense was far from that, and that's what hurt them. They just loaded up on the defensive end of the ball, and they are going to go from being one of the worst defenses in the NFL to at least middle of the pack, at least. And with their offense as good as it has been, this is a team that honestly is a contender for making it out of the AFC, not just into the playoffs, but out of the AFC. This is a very good team.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they got Jerry Tillery, Joey Bosa, Joseph Day, Sebastian Joseph Day. They got some nice draft picks, and some trade type stuff. I mean, in the J.C. Jackson thing, and one of the best corners in the league, Khalil Mack can still kind of get it. I think their defense is just a little short for me. I think it's a top 10 defense, but not top 5.
No, it doesn't need to be top 5.
Well, I'm not sure if
it's top,
where they're going to finish. I'm not exactly sure if it's going to get them all the way. I mean, they still have to make the playoffs, so that'd be a good step. But to get to like the AFC Championship game, I'm not sure if they can get out of their own division.
I don't know. I mean, they've got other good teams in their division. I will give you that. But that offense was great, and their defense is what held them back. If they are a middle of the pack defense, if they're 16th in total defense with the offense as good as it is, they're going to win a lot of games.
So what do you think the order of finish is in the AFC West, which is, by the way, now the new best division in football?
And it's not close as far as that competition. Honestly, I think I have a hard time seeing Kansas City fall back too far, but their defense is going to be a lot younger and just different. And I don't really know where they're going to be as far as that. I like the Chargers roster. I think it's possibly the best roster in that division, but I think that the Broncos have the combination of defense and Russell Wilson is probably going to put them over the top. So I would say
and a new Nathaniel Hackett run team.
Yeah. So I would say Denver, Kansas City, the Chargers, and then the Raiders.
I'm going to disagree with you.
Okay, go for it.
I'm going to say that Kansas City is going to still stay there. They lost Hill. That was huge, but they got so much in return. They got draft capital, and I just don't know that they've fallen off that far based on just one player. I know he did a lot for them. He moved the chains, et cetera. He was kind of just a release valve for that team. But and we'll talk about them just in a little bit because we do face them this year. But I don't want to hand the division to Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos. They just weren't that great last year. I know that they think that they were one piece away, and it was the quarterback. But the reality is they've got issues. Jerry Jeudy was just arrested. I don't know what's going to happen there. I understand that it's not that serious, but who knows what the league's going to do as far as suspension stuff. And they need to come together still. So, and they've got a new coach. And then, anytime you make those kind of changes, sometimes teams start out slow. Sometimes it's real quick. I know Russell Wilson's there. I think the floor for them is 9 wins, just like the floor for Seattle was 9 wins, basically, when Russell Wilson was playing and healthy. But I don't want to hand the division to them just yet. I think that the Kansas City Chiefs are still the top. I know the Kansas City Chiefs are still on the top. I can give you Denver in second place, but man, is it close between the Chargers and Denver. I think Chargers end up in third place in a wild card spot. And then what do you do with the Oakland Raiders? We'll talk about them in a second too. They're all right there. It's like they made Oakland made the playoffs last year. You've got 4 teams that are legit going to be 10-win teams.
Yeah. Talent-wise, all 4 teams are playoff caliber teams. Now, because they have to play each other twice, they have to play all the other 3 twice. They may not get the wins. A team like, New England, who has a much easier path because,
or Miami.
I'm going to say, well, I was thinking New England because I don't trust Miami.
Right.
And so I would say, they have got to play Buffalo twice, but they should get easy wins against the Jets and probably Miami. So they're going to be able to get to those win totals easier than the AFC West teams. I think the AFC West teams are more talented than New England and Miami, but I don't think it will matter because of, unbalanced schedules.
All right. So we talked about the Chargers. Next up is the New York Giants. New York Giants, one of the worst teams in the NFL. Everybody knows that, but they are improving. We face them week 8. They're at home October 30th. Winter starts to set in, or at least colder weather starts to come into play. Kavion Thibodeau and Evan Neal are their draft picks that they got in the first round this year. I'm
curious on how you think they're improving.
Just because they're at the bottom. they had a nice draft. I just think that they're probably still a year or two away, obviously. But are they better than the Seahawks? I mean, we seem to be thinking that, if we're a 3 to 5 win team, we're really not any better positionally than the New York Giants would be, correct?
Nope. No. And so I mean, you have teams like Detroit and the Giants and the Jets and Seattle and Atlanta
and the Panthers
and the Lions that are all competing for draft position and draft picks, because there's going to be 3 top quarterbacks in this draft. And the Jaguars probably don't need one. The Jets probably don't. But all the other teams that I just listed do. So you don't want to win too many games because you don't want to, be the 4th team to pick out of the, the ones that need quarterbacks, because you're going to be the one left out.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. But man, Pete Carroll's never gonna accept that. Okay, and then we go to the Cardinals down in the desert on November 6th. Good weather game. If anybody is interested in going, hook me up, because I live here and I will go with you. Actually, I already have a ticket for that game.
Yep. And then at Tampa and the Tom Brady reunion tour.
Yeah, there's a nice little feather for the Seahawks cap there, playing the first game in Germany, Munich, Germany, against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on November 13th. That's a 6:30 in the morning cat call for you guys. Wake up early, have the coffee instead of the beer flowing, and enjoy that game, or at least DVR it so you can watch it later.
Yeah.
So what do you think of that? What do you think of that game?
Well, so I read some stuff on it, and the Seahawks are actually the second most popular team in Germany, for reasons I have literally no idea.
It's our podcast, Keith.
It might be.
Literally the 3rd highest listening country that we have in our portfolio is Germany.
That doesn't surprise me, given the popularity of the Seahawks there. But I'm like, okay, you have the Seahawkers, the German chapter of the Seahawkers. They've got a number of people there, but why Seattle? I mean, what ties does Seattle have to the region? I can't think of players that would. I mean, like the Seattle Mariners are huge in Japan. Well, that's the doing of Ichiro and Kaz Sasaki and some of the other guys that they've brought over. But why the Seahawks in Germany? I don't know. But they're a popular team there, and so it'll be a very pro Seattle, a very very pro Seattle crowd for an away game, because it's technically an away game. The Seahawks did not give up a home game to go to Germany. They gave up an away game, right? So Tampa, which has a hard time filling their stadium ever, lost a home game for this game, and that's kind of the better way to do it.
The weird thing is, Keith, there's only a 250-mile difference in travel time between Tampa Bay and Munich, and Seattle and Munich.
I know. It's a long way.
So Aaron Donker, our overseas exemption player, is excited for this game for sure. I know that the team has already committed the idea that he would kind of travel with the team and get the flag out the tunnel for this game. So that's good.
Yep. So
all right.
After that,
go ahead.
So they go to Germany, and you're thinking that's a long trip for an early game, a long trip back. What's going to happen after that? The answer is a bye week. And that is probably the best bye week schedule possible, given that they have to go to Germany.
I like the idea that the bye week is in week 11. just stand alone, and then this makes a lot of sense. And it comes after 2 road games. I'm not sure what they're going to do after the Arizona Cardinal game. It's not that big of a trip to get back to Seattle after that game. They probably will do that.
Oh, they
because
will.
I think it's easier to fly from Seattle to Munich than it is from Phoenix to Munich.
And it's not like it buys you anything as far as flights and that kind of stuff. Maybe if you were like in New York, you'd think about staying and practicing and doing that stuff there, or just flying over to Munich early and just
That's what I
practicing
would
there all
do.
week.
I would literally travel from Arizona to Munich and stay extra.
No, I'd come home. I'd come home and let the players see their families and that kind of stuff, and then fly out on like Tuesday and go over early.
Yeah. There's not going to be a lot of practice time for this game. It's going to be one of those line them up and go. Tom Brady, what do you think about him retiring, unretiring? How did that affect their roster and the whole quarterback market and all that kind of stuff?
Well, I don't know if it affected the quarterback market much. He came back in part because Russell Wilson left the NFC, and you just saw this exodus of talent follow him. It's not just Russell Wilson. There's just a lot of guys that moved from the NFC to the AFC, and all of a sudden the NFC just looks like a much easier path.
It was crazy the commotion this offseason.
And I think Brady looked at that and goes, wow, we could probably sleepwalk our way into the playoffs and deep into the playoffs. Let's go ahead and do it. And then it didn't hurt that he was able to get the agreement with everyone that his the coach that he wasn't really happy with to retire. So I think that was part of him retiring, was that, well, Bruce Arians, no thanks. But then when he's like, I'll come back if Bruce Arians retires, and the team goes, okay. So the fact that he got that concession had a lot to do with it too.
So to your point about players leaving the NFC to the AFC, we bring up the Las Vegas Raiders. Chandler Jones, one of the nemesis of Russell Wilson in the NFC West, moves to the AFC West, follows him over there with the Raiders. Devontae Adams with Green Bay ended up having a franchise tag and was traded to the Raiders. So that was interesting. Coach Josh McDaniels takes over after like a 13 or 14 year hiatus in his like rookie coaching campaign. Didn't work out very well. Let's see what happens the second time around.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that's thought of as a great offensive mind and all of that, and he's been kind of hanging out in New England waiting for Belichick to retire, and he got tired of waiting, apparently. But the Raiders are one of those teams. Like, they went out and they go, okay, we need to get better, and they went and got top end talent. Chandler Jones is one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. He is one of the most productive pass rushers over the last 5 years in the NFL. And Devontae Adams is one of those guys that is mentioned as the best receiver in the NFL in that debate. So those are two big name pieces that both moved from the NFC to the AFC. Both weekend contenders in the NFC to do so. And so, that's what I mean. Like, it's just an easier path.
And this division just got better. So that's what I was saying earlier. It's like now you get to the Raiders, it's almost an afterthought, but this team's actually improved. They had a whole bunch of chaos last year. I thought their interim head coach did a great job getting them where they got. But now they've got a whole offseason to get solidified a little bit. New talent acquisition coming into the building, new general manager, new head coach, new. Same old quarterback. They gave him an extension, Derek Carr. But I think he proved last year with an adequate roster, he'd get the job done. So we'll see what the Seahawks do against the Raiders at home on November 27th.
Carr's never been the problem there. But honestly, I think maybe we're underselling the Raiders a little bit because they did manage to make the playoffs and weather all of the just crazy stuff that happened and still make the playoffs. And then they add Devontae Adams and Chandler Jones. So maybe we're underselling how good the Raiders are going to be this year.
It doesn't get any easier for the Seahawks here. Okay.
No.
So, and then we travel to the Los Angeles Rams on December 4th, and we finally get to face one of my favorite players on defense of all time for the Seattle Seahawks, Bobby Wagner, and the Los Angeles Rams. It's hard to even say that. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, he got paid. Good for him. I think they overpaid for someone his age, and the fact that you can see the speed isn't there anymore or whatever, but he's still the most productive linebacker in the NFL in terms of tackling. So, okay.
And Keith, he's going to get better protection. What I mean by that, up front. Aaron Donald, he's going to be able to have a better flow to the ball.
Yeah, Aaron Donald playing in front of you makes any linebacker better. So,
and their entire defensive front is nice. Is better than the Seahawks front.
Oh yeah.
So you know what I mean. So I mean, Bobby Wagner just probably bought himself a couple of years of playing time by going there. Hats off to him. I mean, they were these who don't know that they completely best team in the NFL last year, but they got there and they did it. And they don't really need Bobby Wagner as kind of to come in and be a mentor or a leader or whatever. But that's exactly what they got. I thought that was a great move by them.
Well, this is a team that did lose a bunch. They lost a bunch of talent after the Super Bowl win. They had a lot of guys leave, and yes, they replaced some of them, but not enough of them. And they didn't have the draft capital because of the Matthew Stafford trade. So they weren't able to replace them either. And so I really look at this and I go, this is a team that is coming back down to earth a little bit, but they're still really dangerous. And they're probably a contender just, instantly. And they've got to be the favorite to win this division, don't you think?
I would think that the Rams are sitting there probably as one of 3 or 4 best teams in the NFL currently constructed. I think if you were to rank them, I would go maybe, Kansas City, Tampa, Cincinnati, Los Angeles, Buffalo.
I'll say, well, let's just do the NFC though.
Okay. So I would go Los Angeles, reluctantly San Francisco, Arizona, Seattle.
No, I'm saying like the NFC overall. Who are the best teams in the NFC?
Yeah, I would put the Rams on top, Tampa, then Green Bay.
Yeah, I mean Green Bay's
and maybe San Francisco. After that, it gets really wishy-washy.
It gets
San Francisco,
it gets to become a mess.
Dallas, maybe Arizona. Yeah. I mean, the NFC is hard because there's really only 4 teams now that are even in the top half of the league. I think Arizona,
could be
Dallas, San Francisco Rams, and Green Bay. I mean, there's your 5 that are in the top 15, maybe,
and Tampa
and Tampa. Okay,
yeah.
So 6 out of the top 15 are NFC. The rest are AFC, I think.
Yeah, and Arizona and San Francisco are iffy in that group. So, so I just look. I mean, by default, the Rams are one of the favorites to come out of the NFC,
and that's the way it was last year too. Yeah. Okay, so week 14, we're getting through this. We're almost done. Hang with us. Carolina Panthers, December 11th at home. Just circle it as a win. San Francisco comes after that, week 15. It's a Thursday night game currently right now. Could get shifted out, but we'll find out, flexed out. We've already talked about those guys. Kansas City Chiefs, week 16. At Kansas City. This is a Christmas Eve game, 10 a.m. This is a tough game. This is one of those games where, depending on where Seattle's at in the season, this could be just one of those. We're just going to lay down and let you get this game. We're just going to go home so we can get warm again, because this is going to be tough.
Then they come home to the Jets, which they're the Jets. I mean, that's just not a good franchise.
New Year's game.
Yeah. New Year's Day.
Yeah.
And then finally, week 18, they play at home against the Rams in a game.
So a lot of home games, like 5 out of the last 6 or something like that.
Yeah. A very meaningless game in week 18 for the Rams, who will have their draft position clinched, and Seattle will be trying to lose for a draft position, but it's Pete Carroll, so they're also going to be trying to win just for their own integrity. And the Rams are going to bench all their starters, and the Seahawks could totally screw up the plan for this rebuild in that week. So of all the games in this season, that's the one I'm looking forward to the least.
If there's anything that could make you more grumpy, it would be to intentionally want to lose while winning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I just look at, imagine going into week 18 and you're Seattle and you're currently sitting at 4 wins and you've got the second overall pick. And then you beat the Rams and drop to the 5th overall pick.
Or 6th. Yeah. That was the worst
Right?
case scenario, right?
And so you go from being sitting right where you want so you can get one of those top quarterbacks to dropping out and not getting one and rolling back the Drew Lock show for one more year.
Well, the Jets thing, I mean, you almost have to circle that as a win, but the Jets are ascending. I'm going to tell you right now, I think the Jets are better than the Seahawks as far as win-loss record at the end of the year. And luckily the Rams are our last game. I think that ensures the loss there, even though it's at home or whatever, and it's the Rams. They may not have much to play for. They still have a superior talented team. I think that wins the day, regardless of what the Seahawks want to do. So I don't know. I'm not too worried about it. You know what? I'm just not. I'm not worried about the record too much. I know that ideally we want to finish 3 wins or 4 or whatever, and not any more than that, because that ensures the idea that we can get the franchise quarterback of the future and into this building and start building. And it's probably not going to work out. I think we just need to kind of face the idea that it's probably just not going to work out the way that we want or the way that it would be ideal. And we just need to go in and thinking, Pete Carroll's going to try to get them to win 10 games. He just is. Now, they're not going to win 10. I know that. But that's the mentality that the team is going to carry forward. And I'm kind of proud of the Seahawks when they at least come out and try to win and stuff. So I think it's good for the franchise that Pete's there and that they're trying to win games. I just think that they have enough of a talent deficit where I think that realistically we're probably at about 5. And at 5, I think we're going to be in the top 10. I don't know that that's necessarily going to buy us the best quarterback in the draft. Obviously not. We've got 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, some additional future draft capital that we could possibly move up into the 3 range. I don't know if necessarily we could get the number 1 overall pick, depending on what that team needs. But
it all comes down to who finishes with above Seattle in terms of the draft position, because you've got teams like the Jets and like the Jaguars that are typically in where they're competing for that first overall pick, that have quarterbacks, and so if the Jaguars are sitting there at 2 and Seattle's at 6, you could package those first round picks and move up, and maybe one of the seconds, and move up and get your quarterback. And that would be great, but someone's got to be there for you to do that. If it's Detroit and Carolina, you're screwed.
Or Houston.
Yeah, I mean, because those teams are going to take quarterbacks.
Possibly Atlanta.
Yeah, and so they're not trading with you and moving back to let you have the quarterback that they desperately need.
Yeah.
So.
Right. But you know what? We just I don't know. It's just hard. It's hard to worry about something that's completely out of your control.
Yeah.
And you just kind of have to go. You kind of have to just go play, and then just let the cards fall, because it's worse for your team to get that sort of mentality to seep into your franchise.
Yeah, we've been there. We've been there in Seattle, and so I just look at all of this and I say that the most important thing to happen in this year, as we look at the schedule, is for the Seahawks to develop their young players, especially on defense, to take all those nice athletes that are just primed for, to do great things and to turn them into great players, not just great athletes. And if they can do that this year, then they set themselves up for a year from now to be a legit contender, to make a deep run into the playoffs. And so they've got to develop those young guys.
And what, and I'll say it, I've said it once, I'll say it again. What if one of those players you're talking about ends up being Drew Lock, and he ends up being a guy that has a 68% completion percentage and a touchdown to interception ratio that's completely workable, and he ends up being the quarterback for the next 5 or 6 years and gets us into the playoffs perennially still. And it could be a lot worse. So, I'm not going to write the kid off right here in May. I want to go through camp. I want to go through the process. I want to see what happens. Maybe Geno gets the job. Who knows? I prefer to see Drew Lock get the job because we already know what Geno is.
We know Geno's bad, and because we've seen that show. And then the other thing is, how old is he? Oh yeah, that's right. He's not the
future of the franchise.
No.
So I think they prefer to have Drew Lock win the job, but he's got to go win it. Now, if he goes into camp and he wins the job, I'm all for that. I'm all for that. But
absolutely,
I don't want to write him off first game. I just want to see. I would legitimately want to see and give the guy an opportunity to be able to be to get them to optimize his talent. I believe in the coaching staff. And if they believe in him, then I'm going to give him a shot.
Oh yeah.
All right, let's get out of here.
Let's do
it. Thanks, Keith, for all the analysis on the schedule. That was a good show. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NWChawk. You know where all the show stuff is. Make sure you subscribe though, and do us a favor and let all your friends and family know as well. So until next time, go Hawks.
Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NWChawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.